Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Dreamscape Horsemanship. Today we're doing another Groundwork for Success video. Today we're going to talk about the squeeze game, or the squeeze exercise. And it is honestly probably one of my favorites. It works really well when we start introducing obstacles, which we will get into kind of in the second part of this video later on. So I just wanted to show you kind of the introduction of the steps, and then we'll move on to a more challenging exercise. So if you've been watching our series so far, and you've gone through the stages, the horses have to be able to disengage their hip, yield their shoulders, and do the sending exercise in order for them to have success with the squeeze exercise. So you're building on their skills every time we bring them into the arena and move on to the next exercise. They already know the answer to your cue from the previous exercise, and that's why we always say it's so important to go through the program step by step and not skip over anything just because you think it's boring, or, oh, well, my horse can do that already. And if it can, great. But if not, you have to be able to take the time, introduce those cues, because those are the cues that are needed for the next exercise. So we're standing here with 3-year-old Cooper. He is a Fjord Paint Cross, or Fjord Pinto Cross, and he is going to kind of show us the squeeze exercise. He's done very little of this particular exercise. So we're kind of, they had most of last week working very lightly or had it off because of the major heat wave that we had here in Alberta. So he's kind of getting back into the swing of things, did a couple days of groundwork, plus today. Keeps threatening to rain on me, so we're just sticking to groundwork for today, and then hopefully tomorrow he'll be back under saddle continuing on for the remainder of the month, because this is the last month that we have him for. So, the first couple cues, I'm just going to get him to back up here a little bit. So he's kind of lazy, so I made sure I put my boots on him, leg protection, so that he doesn't step on himself, hurt his legs. And then we've got our stick and string. So using kind of our 14-foot lead and the stick and string, basically what the squeeze exercise is you're doing the sending exercise between objects. So the objects in this particular exercise is going to be myself and the fence. And then we'll move on to it being a couple obstacles, pretty much anything that has a narrow space, so that there's pressure on each side of the horse. So you could be going through a couple barrels, tires, the cowboy curtain when you have 2 stands on either side for the cowboy curtain, between you and the fence, between a couple bridges. There's pretty much no limit to where this exercise comes in handy. Even going in and out of a gate in the pasture can be a version of the squeeze exercise depending on how sensitive your horse is. And the benefit of this exercise is that it pairs really well leading them up to any kind of trailer loading exercises that we do later on in our program. So, basically I'm going to ask him to send through between me and the fence. So same cues as our sending exercise. So I'm going to start moving him kind of off this left shoulder here. So stick and string in my right hand, the excess lead I just kind of have between, just kind of laying loose in my hand, and the lead in my left hand here. So I'm just going to step away from the fence a little bit, give him room. For now, I want to start with a little bit more than a stick length between me and the fence. And that's going to give plenty of room for him to move through. So I'm basically going to lift up, cue that left shoulder to step through, and I'm basically going to do the sending exercise through that gap. So we're gonna point, I'm gonna kind of give him a tap there, and yield that hip. So ideally, as we come through, we want him to be closer to the fence. This particular spot has a little bit of a lip on the ground under the fence, so he can't get right up against it. But we would want him a little bit closer to where he was. So I had to up the pressure a little bit and kind of use my stick on his barrel to kind of push him, drive him through there. So he kind of got a little bit away from the fence. So same thing, I'm gonna send him back through, switch to my stick and string to my other hand. I'm gonna point him through this way, flag that shoulder, and get him to step up and yield that hip. Pretty much as that flank passes my belly button or kind of my belt buckle area, that's when I want to start cueing him for that yield of the hip. And then we'll slowly work him closer to the fence, and I'm slowly going to close this gap until there's just enough space for him to scoot through. So I liked his amount of hustle there that second time. First time I had to get after him. Second time I kind of gave him a chance to follow those cues, and he did kind of hustle through there. So same thing, point, cue that shoulder. I'm going to let him walk through, and there, yield the hip. So already we're a lot closer to the fence. So ideally, I'm just going to flag that shoulder there, get him to stop. Ideally, you want them to be able to walk, trot, or even lope through that gap without having too much spook in them or kind of too much reaction. So him walking calmly through there was good. We'll see if we can get a nice calm trot. So he's backing up off that, so I'm just going to flag that shoulder, send him through. Nice and calm, yield that hip. He's a little late yielding that hip there, so he's away from the fence again. Send him back through, good. Didn't have to tap that shoulder this time. And yield that hip. So he kind of hung on my hand a little bit there, so I tapped his hindquarters with a little bit more. Flag that shoulder, he's not allowed to go that way. There we go, yield. So he was a little nervous going through that time because I've been getting after him. Flag that shoulder again, send him back through. Yield that hip. So we're just going to keep going back and forth until he settles a little bit. And when he hangs on the halter, I'm going to yield his hindquarters just a little bit more. There we go. Get him to soften up and yield all the way towards me. So right there, he's not really doing much, so I'm going to flag that shoulder, stay with him until he goes all the way through, yield that hip. Now we got to kind of yield his shoulder back onto our line here, send him back through. And there we go. That was a little bit nicer with his hip. He kind of tripped a little bit in the dirt, but at least he was a little bit more willing to give me. There we go. Just going to let him stand. Because that's how we get them light, is rewarding that little bit of try there, stepping up off that pressure. So he didn't step up there, so I smacked the ground with my stick, kind of upped the energy. And now I'm going to ask him to step all the way through. We're kind of lazy, so I'm going to flag. And yield that hip. So again, I want to lift up, give him a chance to acknowledge that. He's not, so flag. And yield. Again, wait for him to do something. He's not, flag. Flag harder. I want him to wake up and pay attention. There we go. There, better. So he's a little nervous coming through there, but he did step up off just the halter. So again, gonna lift up, wait for him to respond, flag. Lift up, wait for him to respond, flag. Waiting for him to respond, flag. Now he's stepping back, so I'm gonna step in and really flag him, and yield. Back him up. Ask him to step forward, we're not getting anywhere, flag. There we go, so I just closed that gap, and he stopped, there we go. Good job. So it was a very abrupt, very kind of nervous stop, but he stopped. So I'm going to let him stand there. Let him decide that that's what we were supposed to be doing. And then again, I'm going to lift up. Nothing's happening, going to flag. Lift up. Nothing's happening. Flag. And yield. And he didn't quite follow through with the shoulder, so I'm just going to flag that shoulder. And same thing, we're going to lift up. Oh, he almost did it, so I'm going to wait. Lift up. Nothing's happening. Flag. And yield. Lift up. There we go. Yield. Alright, so the next stage of this exercise is going to be using a couple obstacles. So you can use whatever you happen to have. If you only have one barrel, then you can send the horse between the barrel and the fence. And basically you have the same concept. We're just slowly going to move these barrels closer and closer together until he has a very minimal line of travel in order to get through. So we're just going to send them around, and I'm going to bring them through a couple times. This is a sending exercise. And ideally, the reason I use this one blue plastic barrel and this particular black barrel, even though it's metal, is both of the barrels are pretty light. Because once I get to the point where it's a really narrow space, I want to be able to see if he'll knock them over without too much of a reaction. So I'm just going to flag it. I'm going to bring him through. I'm going to ask him to stop. So this second part of our squeeze exercise goes back to all the backing exercises we did back in episode 3, so that we can do the step up and the step back through this, as well as send him in between. So I'm just going to shake my lead. Nothing's happening, so I'm going to march towards him, get him to back through. Then I'm going to get him to step up. And we're basically going to keep doing this until all I have to do is wiggle the lead. So not really happening, going to wiggle the lead a little harder. Still not really backing up, so I'm going to a little harder. So again, the issue with him, get him to step up, is always going to be that he puts in the minimal amount of effort. So I have to up my pressure even higher to get that result, and then we can slowly start getting softer and softer. So again, a little wiggle, there we go. So I'm just going to get a little harder with my wiggle because he's kind of being lazy. There we go, so that was better. He's not going to back up a million miles an hour right off the top. That shoulder's still going all the way over there today. Again, back him up. There we go. I'm going to move this blue barrel a little bit closer now. And same concept. Step up, send through. He's starting to bump the stirrups off that blue barrel, which is good. I'm going to ask him to come back around. The shoulder is still being pushy, so I'm just going to flag it with a little bit more energy. Get him to come back through here. And this time, if you can come around the circle without being pushy, there we go. I'm going to bring him through. Up, step up. Get him to stop. And we're going to back. Some actual, enthusiastic backing up there. So again, shake the lead. Step towards them with a little bit more energy. Get some actual backing up happening. There we go. Licking the lips. He's willing to step up that time. And one more. There we go. So he bumped both barrels that time, and it was a lot better back up. So his head was kind of up because my energy was up, but that'll slowly come down as he realizes that he should just back up rather than being lazy. Again, we're going to move this just a little bit closer. So with him, I'm going to bring this just a little bit closer even still. So at this point, he should have to knock one of these over. He's a little wider in the middle. One of these barrels is probably going to all over, and that's exactly what I want, and I want him to remain calm. If he doesn't, then we just keep doing the exercise until he can calmly walk through there, pushing the barrel out of his way. So, again, I'm going to start with just sending him through. Oh, we might not tip either one over, but he does have to push both of them out of his way to kind of make room for that big belly. And the stirrups on the saddle create a little bit more of a, yeah, so right there he kind of hesitated, just going to flag a little bit on the behind that drive line. Yield that hip. Send him back through off the right shoulder. Very nice. Now I'm going to see if I can just get him to step up like we were doing before. Yep, that's all right. So I'm just going to flag that right shoulder. Yield. There we go. I want him to be calm right in that gap. Now ask him to step forward. Step forward. Step forward. Step forward. Whoop. So we didn't quite lose that blue barrel. So we'll see what happens here. One more step, and I have to move back up. I'm going to try and stay out of the camera range here so you can see the gap and see the barrels moving. There we go. Beautiful. That was very nice. I'm going to ask him to step up. I'll flag the air over here to get him to step up with a little bit more enthusiasm. So he's hitting those barrels and he's deciding that he can't really come through there because there's some pressure. So I just want to flag a little bit, hold that pressure on the halter, and I just want to get him to the point where he'll just step up and push that barrel out of his way. There we go. There. And I am going to let him come all the way through that time. Because catching him right when he figured out he can come through is only going to make him realize that he can't come through. Yield that hip. Now I'm going to ask him to step up through and see if we can't back him up again. Again, just flagging that air off to the side here, holding that pressure steady on his head. There we go. So every time he takes that little step, I'm giving his head back to him. So right there, release. Right there, release. Right there, release. So he's not actually stepping forward, but you can see all of his body coming forward. There we go. We finally lost that barrel, so I'm going to back him up. Good job. Now I'm going to put this really close. So this is probably as close as we're going to get. And this time I'm just going to send him back and forth through. And I'm going to see if he'll push those barrels out of his way. So this is really great when you start going towards trailer loading because the straight loads or any of the angle hauls with the rear tack room, it's a pretty narrow opening to get in there. So this is going to build that up really nicely for when we get to trailer loading. So I'm just going to keep flagging, let him kind of figure it out. Step behind that drive line just a little bit to try and drive him forward. If I feel like he's going to jump the barrel, I do want to kind of give that pressure back to him because I obviously don't want him to try and jump through here. I don't want him to hurt himself. What I do want is him to find that little gap right there where he's standing and go through.